All right. Tonight, we travel back, far back, to a time when sleep wasn't crammed into 6 stress-drenched hours between doom scrolling and deadlines. No blue light, no email chimes, no apps counting your REM cycles while silently judging your caffeine intake. Just you, darkness, and a rhythm older than alarm clocks. You're stepping into a world where sleep doesn't come in one solid block. And that's not a bug. It's the feature. And you probably won't survive this. But before your anxiety starts twitching, do me a favor. Subscribe before you fall asleep. Yes, you. The one squinting at your screen while already under a weighted blanket. We're building a global map of the sleepless, so drop your city and local time in the comments. Let's see how far this bedtime rebellion stretches. Now go ahead and kill the overhead light. Maybe throw a blanket over your shoulders, or crack the window just a bit to let in that perfectly spooky breeze. It's story time, and we're dreaming in medieval. You trudge into a stone cottage just past twilight, the air thick with smoke, and the faint, comforting scent of onions. The hearth glows like a sleepy eye, half-lidded and pulsing. Around you, the village has gone still. No glow from windows, no late-night traffic. Just quiet, deep, and absolute. In this world, the sun is the true clock. And once it disappears, your day is over. You're tired, but not exhausted. It's a different kind of tired. A slowing, a settling. You lie on your hay-stuffed mattress beside a sibling or two, possibly a snoring goat, and the family cat, who may or may not be a witch's spy, depending on local gossip. You drift off quickly. No melatonin gummies, no ASMR playlist, just layers of wool, the hush of wind, and the comfort of knowing no one expects anything of you until morning. Except surprise, you'll be awake again. Around midnight, your eyes open, not with panic, but purpose. Because here's the medieval secret. People didn't sleep through the night. They had 2 sleeps. It's called segmented sleep, and it was a totally normal thing. First sleep began not long after sundown, say around 8 or 9 p.m., and lasted 4 to 5 hours. Then came a natural waking period, maybe an hour or 2. And after that, second sleep, carrying you through till dawn. Historians still argue whether this sleep cycle was a necessity born of cold hunger and candlelight, or whether it was a deeply ingrained biological rhythm disrupted only by modern electricity. Either way, for medieval people, it was simply life. During that waking interval, known quaintly as the watching. You'd stretch, toss another log on the fire, maybe chat with your bedmate, or sneak off to tend to the chamber pot, gross but necessary. Sometimes this waking period was spiritual. People prayed, reflected. Some read if they were literate, though books were rare and expensive and literacy rarer still. Others were more lively. There are records, plenty of them, suggesting that midnight was a great time for intimacy. Married couples found the middle of the night lull to be a peaceful, even sacred window for connection. Some even claimed it made for healthier children. You can't make this stuff up. Well, you could, but monks already did it 700 years ago. You sit by the embers wrapped in a blanket. A neighbor might knock yes, even at 1 a.m., to borrow fire or bring news. No one thinks this is strange. The world is quiet, soft-edged, and oddly safe under the stars. Eventually, the fire dims again. You yawn, pad back to your bed, and ease into second sleep. This one's deeper, dreamier. You wake with the birds feeling somehow fuller than if you'd slept straight through. Today, scientists say our bodies might still want to sleep like this. That deep, unhurried rhythm. That permission to pause halfway through. But our schedules don't allow it. Our phones won't shut up. Our caffeine addiction has opinions, and so we lie there, wondering why we can't sleep, while our ancestors, without clocks, pills, or blackout curtains, slept like absolute champions. Maybe they knew something we forgot. The door creaks as you slip back into the bedchamber, a low, timbered room that smells of beeswax, old wool, and sleep itself. The fire's glow still pulses softly on the walls, but your eyes drift to the real star of the show, the bed. It's not the kind of bed you're used to. There's no mattress, brand, promising orthopedic miracles. No memory foam, contouring to your midnight snack regret. Instead, you've got something that looks like a cross between a hayloft and a shipping crate. And somehow, it's perfect. You step toward it. This isn't just a sleeping surface. It's a structure, a fortress, a personal hibernation den handcrafted from oak muscle and superstition. The medieval bed is high off the ground, not because the peasants were lazy, but because cold air hugs the floor like a passive-aggressive ghost. Elevation meant warmth, status, and most importantly, fewer rats attempting to spoon with your toes. You climb in. Not easily, mind you. There's often a small stool involved. Beds back then weren't so much entered as ascended. If you've ever performed acrobatics, getting into a loft bed with a twisted knee and a candlestick, you understand. You pull the curtains closed. Yes, curtains. Medieval beds, especially for those who had a few coins to rub together, often came with thick drapes that closed off the bed like a cozy, fabric-wrapped cave. This wasn't for privacy. Your family's all here anyway, remember, but to keep out the cold, the drafts, and possibly the neighbor's bad dreams. Inside your curtain, cocoon, things are warm, muffled, dark, in that perfect, calming way that tells your brain you are safe now. You can go away for a few hours. The mattress itself is stuffed with straw feathers, or a mix of whatever was available, wool moss, maybe a little animal hair, if you didn't ask too many questions. Some beds even had ropes crisscrossed underneath the mattress to hold it up, which is where the phrase "sleep tight" may have originated. Quirky fringe tidbit. Folks actually had to tighten their beds by pulling the ropes every so often. It's not soft the way we think of softness. It's firm, but forgiving. Enough give to cushion your bones, enough resistance to keep you from disappearing into it like a Victorian fainting couch. Next to your bed is a small table. On it, a candlestick, a scrap of bread you forgot to eat, and if you're lucky, a carved wooden charm to ward off nightmares. Maybe it's a saint. Maybe it's just a potato someone thought looked holy. Either way, it's there, watching, protecting. Historians still argue whether these nighttime trinkets were genuine spiritual safeguards or just comforting traditions passed down like lullabies. But in the stillness of the bedchamber, you don't care. It's there. It helps. End of story. You lie back and listen. Silence is never complete here. You hear the soft creak of timbers, the whuffle of someone breathing deeply nearby, and perhaps the sleepy snort of a pig just outside the wall. But there are no sirens, no fridge hum, no refrigerator beeping like a needy robot. Just you and the dark and the heavy weight of a wool blanket that smells a little like sheep, but also like dreams passed down through generations. This is what sleep meant. Not an interruption of productivity, but a full surrender. A retreat. A necessary sacred rhythm that began when the sun disappeared and ended when it returned. You roll over and tuck yourself in tighter. No nightlight, no white noise machine, just darkness wrapped in linen and wood. You close your eyes, and somewhere, not far off, a rooster dreams of announcing your return to the waking world. But not yet. You're curled up under wool, your breath slow, the world dim behind your closed eyelids, and then someone shifts, not just beside you, on you. A knee sharp as a philosophy professor's wit digs into your ribs. You grunt. They grunt. You both settle back down. Welcome to communal sleeping medieval style. Because in this world, sleep is rarely a solo act. You don't have your own room. You might not even have your own side. Beds are shared bodies, pressed close, not out of affection necessarily, but out of necessity. You're not alone tonight. You've got your siblings flanking you, a cousin near your feet, and maybe a neighbor's apprentice snoozing at the edge. If you're lucky, no one brought a dog. If you're really lucky, they brought one, and it's warm and doesn't snore. This wasn't weird back then. In fact, it was deeply practical. People slept together for warmth, because heating a room with a fireplace the size of a shoebox takes magic, and more wood than anyone has. One body isn't enough to stave off the chill. 2 is better. 4 is glorious. And 6, that's deluxe peasant suite living. Even in wealthier homes, shared sleeping happened. Servants might sleep near the Lord's family, apprentices near master's monks in rows. And of course, families always shared beds with younger children, often wedged between their parents like sweaty little heat generators. The weird part? It worked. No one fretted about personal space. No one complained that they couldn't fall asleep without white noise or 600 thread count sheets. You didn't toss and turn over existential dread. You were too busy making sure your sister's elbow didn't dislodge a tooth. It sounds like chaos. And honestly, it was. Someone always snored. Someone always rolled too much. Someone probably drooled. The bed creaked. The hay rustled. A nearby cow belched in its sleep. But still, you slept. Because that bed wasn't just furniture. It was connection, safety, familiarity wrapped in linen and livestock. Historians still debate just how universal these group sleeping arrangements were, or how much they varied between rural and urban life. But the records are clear. On one point, solitary sleep was a luxury, an unusual, often impractical one. And here's the kicker. Many travelers actually paid to share a bed with strangers at inns. Inns didn't rent out rooms, they rented out spaces in beds. You'd climb in next to someone who might be a merchant, a monk, or a bandit, and hope they didn't talk in their sleep. Or worse. Yes, there were rules. Yes, people tried to sleep head to foot to avoid awkward intimacy. And yes, things still got awkward. You once again roll over in your shared bed and discover that someone has taken your blanket entirely. You grumble. They murmur an apology that sounds like "mauve," and you wrestle back your half. This too is part of the rhythm, and it's not without its sweetness. In the quiet moments after the murmurs fade and the breathing sinks, you feel it, the warmth of others, the assurance that you are not alone in the dark, that someone, whether sister or stranger, is breathing beside you, that if the wind howls or the wolves approach or the fire sputters out, you're not facing it solo. That's not nothing. You scratch your nose and find it's already warm. No icy tip tonight. You reach a foot toward the edge of the bed and bump against another. They don't pull away. Somewhere, a baby starts to fuss. Its mother shushes gently. A lullaby hums through the air like smoke. It's an old song. You don't know the words, but it curls around your thoughts anyway. You smile. In a world where privacy is rare, closeness is survival and sleep. Real heavy, dream thick sleep comes not in silence or solitude, but in the rhythm of bodies, breathing together, nestled like firewood before the hearth. You sigh, shift once more, and drift back down. Blanket reclaimed, elbow dodged. Perfect. You wake briefly as the bed creaks again. Someone's adjusting their blanket. Someone else mumbles in Latin, or possibly just sleep gibberish. You're too groggy to care. What does catch your attention is the sheer variety of clothing, or the lack thereof. Here's something that might surprise you. Medieval people didn't exactly own a drawer full of pajamas. They slept in what they had or didn't. For peasants, that usually meant not much. You might have a single tunic worn all day, every day, until it basically became part of your personality. At night, you had two choices. Keep it on crusty and warm, or take it off chilly and free. You opt for the second sleepwear option, a linen shift if you're lucky, lightweight, loose-fitting, and probably patched up by a grandmother with excellent needle skills, and no time for modesty. Or perhaps you sleep nude beneath your blankets, which isn't scandalous. Here it's efficient. No fabric means less laundry, which means less boiling water, ash soap, and soul-crushing labor. Nobles, of course, had options. They had night clothes made from finer linen, trimmed with embroidery, if they were feeling fancy. Some even wore nightcaps, not just to look adorable like cartoon characters, but to keep their heads warm in unheated castles that felt more like freezers with furniture. You, of course, reach for your modern sensibilities and briefly panic about the absence of fuzzy socks. But your feet are nestled between two family members and a semi-clean goat, so you're good. Here's the thing, the body adjusts. You might shiver for a few minutes, but under wool blankets with bodies nearby, and a piso bed surrounded by heavy curtains, warmth builds. It becomes a bubble. And suddenly, you're not thinking about goosebumps, you're just drifting. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly valued comfort the way we do, or whether their standards were simply calibrated to endure. Most agree their expectations were different, but not non-existent. Sleep mattered. Warmth mattered. But the methods, let's say, rustic. You reach over to scratch your arm and feel the weave of rough fabric, likely unbleached, possibly homespun, and definitely not hypoallergenic. There's no plush microfiber, no bamboo thread blend, just honest, slightly itchy linen. And yet, it does the job. Your neighbor shifts. They've apparently slept in their full tunic belt and all. Maybe they were too tired to change. Maybe they're just paranoid. Maybe it's their emotional support garment. People back then didn't have the luxury of separating day from nightwear with crisp delineations. Clothing was about utility. If you were cold, you slept in your outer cloak. If it rained and you had to trudge through mud, you still slept in it because it was your only one. But here's a quirky little tidbit. While full nudity wasn't scandalous, in a sleeping context, partial nudity sometimes raised eyebrows. That is, walking around with just a shirt and no trousers was more likely to get you judged than if you were completely bare beneath your blanket. Go figure. You curl deeper into your covers and think about how strange it is that sleep today often requires a mood. Aromatherapy apps, perfect bedding, elaborate pre-bed rituals. Back then, all you had to do was stop moving. And honestly, you envy that a little. There's no existential dread about how many hours you have left. No optimized sleep hygiene routine. Just one simple task. Close your eyes and let the dark take you. No performance. No pressure. You yawn, letting your cheek press into the pillow, or at least the vaguely lumpy sack of straw acting as a pillow. Your hair smells like fire smoke. Your feet are warm. Your linen shift is riding up, but you don't care. And you realize something slightly absurd. You're comfortable. Not spa hotel comfortable. Not memory foam cloud comfortable. But content. Safe. Heavier. Now you slide further into sleep clothes, or no clothes, wrapped not just in fabric, but in the ancient rhythm of human rest. You wake to the soft groan of timber above your head, and a rooster's voice cracking like it's hitting poultry puberty. You roll over and catch a glimpse of the thatched ceiling, its straw tips dangling like sleepy eyelashes. The bed shifts as someone gets up, a quiet rustle. then the creak of floorboards and the hush of bare feet on packed earth. Today you feel the divide, because whether you were a lord with a mattress fluffed with goose feathers, or a field hand curled in a hayloft, your sleep was shaped by one very medieval truth. Class changed everything. And you've been slipping between both worlds. Let's walk through them. You start in the manor. The Lord's chamber is large, drafty, and dramatically underheated. Think castle aesthetic, but with more mildew. The bed is impressive. Thick mattress, embroidered canopy, actual pillows. You could fit a whole peasant family in there. Probably have. At some point. Let's not ask. Lords and ladies didn't sleep alone, mind you. Their attendants often slept in the same room, sometimes even in trundle beds pulled out like ancient IKEA. Privacy was rare, even with wealth. But comfort, that was where money flexed hard. They had sheets, real ones, washed semi-regularly and aired in the sun, quilts that were heavy and warm, beds big enough to roll over twice without kneeing your brother in the stomach. Now slide across the social scale. In a peasant's cottage, the bed might be a low platform or just woven rushes spread over dirt. A bit of straw in a sack served as mattress. Blankets, if you had them, were patched and precious. And yet, people slept, often well, because exhaustion, as it turns out, is the great equalizer. Peasants toiled from dawn to dusk. Manual labor in fields, kitchens, workshops. Nothing leaves your body quite as willing to collapse into sleep. You didn't need calming tea or a podcast about mindfulness. You needed a horizontal surface, and preferably no mice. Historians still argue whether the peasant class got better sleep because they worked harder, or whether the quality of their sleep was compromised by cold, poor nutrition and physical strain. Most agree the sleep was deep, but maybe not restorative by today's standards. And then there were townsfolk, tradesmen, bakers, blacksmiths, people who straddled both worlds. Their sleeping quarters were often tucked behind their shops or above them, sometimes even beside the hearth. Cozy, smoky, filled with the scent of flour or singed leather, depending on your gig. Their beds, functional, maybe better than a field, worse than a noble's chamber, but often supplemented with clever tricks. Warmed bricks, shared blankets, and fur pelts that doubled as bedding and status symbol. One fringe curiosity. In some towns, apprentices shared beds with their masters, not out of affection, but because beds were limited and relationships were practical. This made for an intimate, if awkward, understanding of one's employer. You roll over in your peasant nest and imagine waking up in that manor bed, Or better yet, not waking up, sleeping in. A luxury unknown to most medieval folk. When daylight ruled your schedule, and roosters were nature's most punctual overlords, sleeping late wasn't just rare, it was unthinkable. Unless, of course, you were sick or dead. You blink at the ceiling. The rooster crows again, louder this time, like it's personally offended that you're still horizontal. Someone stokes the fire. Someone else coughs hard enough to scare the dog. Time to get up. But here's the twist. No one expects you to be cheerful about it. No toxic productivity. No chirpy morning routines. You'll rise, stretch, maybe mutter a prayer that your joints work today, and go wash your face with icy water from a basin. Then it's work. Long, hard, physical. And tonight, you'll be back here. Not on silk sheets, not on orthopedic foam. Just this little hay-stuffed slice of peace, layered with the echoes of countless sleepers who came before you, lords, peasants, and everyone between. And when you close your eyes again, you'll all drift off together. You don't notice it at first, how deeply the darkness has settled. Not the kind of darkness that gets pushed back by a nightlight, or the soft buzz of a phone screen, but true, enveloping, velvety black. You blink. Nothing. And that's how it's supposed to be. Because in the medieval world, the silence of candles meant the day was over. Not paused, not extended by neon signs or TikTok rabbit holes. Over. The hearth has dimmed to embers. The single beeswax candle on the bedside table, if your family was lucky enough to own one, is out. Candles are expensive. You don't burn them casually. Light is a resource rationed like bread and firewood. The night owns this world now. You can barely see the person beside you, but you can hear their slow breathing. Feel the blanket rise and fall slightly with each exhale. There is no glow under the door, no LED on a charger, just dark. And somehow, it's calming. Without the artificial dazzle of modern lighting, your body does what it was built to do. It follows the sun. Your brain, freed from the glow of screens and bulbs, releases melatonin like a bartender on payday. Your circadian rhythm stretches out its legs and says finally. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly felt rested or just learned to survive fatigue. But one thing's certain, their nights were longer. Not just in hours, but in feeling, in presence, in depth. And it's not silent, this darkness. Oh no. There's the wind, the creak of the house beams settling like tired shoulders, the occasional hoot of an owl, or less charmingly, a mouse rustling in the corner. These aren't interruptions. They're lullabies. Back in your own world, you think about blackout curtains and sleep masks and noise machines pumping out rainforest sounds. But here, all of it happens naturally. The stars are your ceiling lights, the fire your dimmer switch, and sleep. It comes not because you've hacked it with a morning routine, but because your body was made for this. There's no more work to be done, no more things to catch up on. Your muscles ache from honest labor. Your thoughts don't race because you haven't been doom scrolling for 3 hours. You're tired in a real way, a good way. And then there's the sleep that follows candlelight, the kind that rolls over you like a warm fog. It's full of dreams shaped by the dark animals, with human voices, fields that grow silver, wheat your grandmother's hands, weaving the stars into your hair. Quirky little tidbit. Some people feared the dark, not just because of practical dangers, but because it was spiritually charged. Night was when demons stirred ghosts, walked, and the boundary between worlds thinned like old parchment. That's why prayers before bed weren't optional. They were armor. You whisper one now. You don't even need to believe in it. The rhythm alone is enough to calm your breath. From ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties, you don't finish it. You're already halfway gone, because this is what medieval night does best. It doesn't fight sleep. It invites it. Even your thoughts get quieter, softer. Your breath slows. Your shoulders sink. And all around you, the world goes still. The kind of still that modern life can't replicate, no matter how many meditation apps you subscribe to. There's no light leaking in from traffic, no hum of distant power lines, no binge watching, just one more episode, just darkness, complete, honest, kind. And you small and safe, beneath wool blankets and heavy night air, letting go. At first, you don't even realize you've woken up. The fire's died down again. The bed is warm, blessedly warm, but your eyes are open. You lie there, blinking into the dark, not quite asleep, not quite alert. And this is the midnight magic hour. You're not alone in this liminal space. In fact, for centuries, this was a normal part of the night. First sleep had ended. Second sleep hasn't begun. And this in-between time, the watch, as some called it, was as much a part of the rhythm of sleep as the dreams themselves. You stretch quietly. No one else is stirring yet, but give it time. Somewhere in the darkness, a neighbor coughs. A child murmurs nonsense. Someone, a bold overachiever, gets up to stoke the fire. The orange glow flickers briefly across the room like a sleepy eyelid. This midnight interlude wasn't just tolerated, it was embraced. You might say a prayer if you're pious, or reflect on your day if your mind is still chewing on it. Maybe you pick up a book if you're literate, and if you own one, which in this time is about as rare as a unicorn in a library. Still, some people did. You sit up quietly and reach for your shoes. A short walk. Tempting. Just outside the cottage, stars spill across the sky with absurd indifference, and your breath fogs in the cold. You might use this time to visit the latrine check on the animals, or sit by the coals lost in thought. And yes, sometimes people did wander. Quirky historical tidbit. There are accounts of midnight visits between neighbors, little social moments, a quiet cup of ale, a whispered conversation, even a little gossip. It wasn't unusual to knock on a friend's door in the dead of night and be invited in because everyone was awake anyway. And if you're married, well, let's just say this hour had a reputation for being intimate. Many records, medical, spiritual, and just plain nosy, mention the watch as a favored time for conjugal connection. Apparently, people were more relaxed, less burdened by the day's stress, and fun fact, believed it helped ensure healthy children. Historians still argue whether this was genuinely healthier or just a charmingly optimistic superstition. But either way, the watch had its perks. You wander back to the bed, stepping lightly, to avoid waking the still sleeping bodies, sprawled like spilled laundry. You ease beneath the covers, your skin tingling from the cool air, and settle in for second sleep. This phase is different, deeper, dreamier. Your mind unspools slowly, like thread from a spinning wheel, and the dreams that follow this midnight intermission are vivid, woven from fragments of prayers, the crackle of fire, the chill of night air, and the sense that the world is vast, dark, and yours for the wandering. There's something magical here. This idea that night is not a block of unconsciousness, but a layered living rhythm. That you don't have to fight your body's natural cycles. That you can wake not in panic, but in peace, and then drift back under, like slipping into a second bath. Today, we call it insomnia. Back then, it was just normal. You sigh. The mattress creaks. Someone snores softly nearby, steady as a lullaby. The fire's glow fades again. You close your eyes. Second sleep begins, and it will be better than the first. You're deep now. Second sleep hits differently. like sinking into the cool, still waters of a lake at night. Your breathing has slowed. Your limbs feel as though they belong to the bed, not to you. There's no sharp boundary between your skin and the blankets, no edge to your thoughts. This is dream territory. And unlike the restless brain chatter chaos of modern dreaming, the medieval mind treated dreams as messages, portents, sometimes even prophecies. In your sleep, a crow speaks in a voice you almost recognize. A door creaks open into a garden that smells like your grandmother's stew. A long-dead relative shows up not to haunt you, but to hand you a fish and walk away. Classic dream logic. When you wake up, no one's going to laugh this off as neural garbage. No. These dreams matter. Because in the medieval world, dreams weren't random. They were riddles. You'd wake and try to piece together what they meant. Was the fish a sign of good fortune? Was the crow a warning? Should you avoid stew? Historians still argue whether medieval dream interpretation was more spiritual or medical in nature. Some believed dreams were divine whispers. Others blamed indigestion. The balance of science and superstition was flexible. You stir slightly. Somewhere nearby, a monk is waking from a similar dream and heading straight to his manuscript to record it. Not because it was particularly wild, but because it was part of his reality. Dream journals weren't just a new age TikTok thing. Medieval people wrote them down sometimes with drawings, sometimes with full-on biblical analysis. One quirky tidbit: the dream of the rood. One of the oldest Old English poems is presented entirely as a dream vision, a holy one. People believed the subconscious could reach places the conscious mind never would. You, however, aren't worried about poetry right now. You're floating through a sleep so untroubled, so whole, that even your anxieties have curled up and gone quiet. You're dreaming in wool and wood smoke, in candlelight and cathedral bells, in the soft murmur of voices saying morning prayers in a nearby chapel. Because here's the thing: second sleep is the sweet spot. In the first sleep, your body lets go. In the second, your mind takes over. And what it does with that freedom depends on where you've been, what you've eaten, how much daylight you soaked in, and whether your neighbor whispered ghost stories into your bed curtains after dinner. Some believed this sleep was where healing happened. Not just physical recovery, but spiritual restoration. The church often encouraged people to reflect on their dreams during morning prayer. Did they see angels, hear music? Did a saint appear with a shopping list. You, at this moment, dream of feathers, falling upward, of rain that sings, of warmth that comes not from fire, but from memory. And it feels real, more real than the flickering screen you'll one day return to, more grounding than any sleep tracker could measure, more honest than any wellness blog could describe. You are sleeping like your ancestors did for thousands of years, not all at once, not uninterrupted, but fully, organically, wholly. You won't remember the full dream, of course. Most people didn't. Just flashes. A voice. A smell. A shape that lingers just long enough to make breakfast feel haunted in the nicest way. But you'll carry it in your breath, in the quiet way you move through the next day, in the peace you didn't have to earn because it was already yours. Your second sleep deepens. The house is silent again. Even the rooster is taking a break. And you, dear traveler, are right where you belong. You wake slowly this time. The edges of your consciousness emerge like the sunrise itself, gradual golden, and a little bit grudging. First, the smell, not of coffee, not of toast, but of smoke, soft and lingering from last night's fire. Then come the sounds. A dog scratching, wood, shifting someone outside, muttering to chickens with more affection than you've ever shown a coworker. You stretch beneath the covers and realize something unexpected. You're rested. Not I hit the snooze button, 7 times rested. Not I got exactly 2 hours, according to my smartwatch, rested. No. This is that ancient, bone-deep body knows what it's doing kind of rested. You slept like a medieval person, which is to say, very differently than you're used to. And here's why it worked. The medieval dawn and night weren't at war with each other. They were partners in rhythm. Light meant work. Dark meant rest. No fluorescent battles, no 2 a.m. online shopping. No midnight email scrolls pretending to be productivity. Your sleep followed solar logic. It bowed to the sun. You had your first sleep, your wakeful watch, your second sleep. And you let each part of that rhythm do what it was designed to do. Historians still debate whether this segmented sleep was universal or mostly regional, based on latitude and culture. But the pattern is found in countless records, from monks' diaries to farmers' folk tales. And it wasn't just passive. People used the night creatively. Some wrote, some prayed. Some snuck out for forbidden trysts, because let's be honest, romance always finds a loophole. You, however, used it exactly as it was meant to be used. You closed your eyes. You let the dark in. You rested. And now it's morning. There's no alarm, no jarring beep or chipper voice telling you to hydrate. Just the soft rhythms of life resuming around you. Someone stokes the fire. Another sets out to fetch water from the well. A baby babbles. A rooster, now fully caffeinated by sunlight, crows again, like it's auditioning for a Broadway revival of Chicken Hamlet. You sit up slowly. There's straw in your hair. Your knees creak. But your heart feels quiet. In a good way. Quirky detail. Some households had formal morning rituals, from reciting a psalm to splashing icy water on their faces, with the same gravity you might reserve for a Monday espresso shot. Washing, dressing, praying. These weren't just chores. They were gentle entries into the waking world. You find your shoes worn muddy, loyal, and slip them on. The floor is cold, but your chest is warm. Not from a heater, not from caffeine, but from the kind of sleep that doesn't just refresh, it restores. You slept like someone who had no emails. Waiting, like someone who didn't need to check their phone first thing, like someone whose entire nervous system was singing lullabies written by starlight and straw mattresses. And honestly, you think you could get used to this. You step outside, and the morning air greets you like an old friend, crisp, damp, and slightly smoky. Your breath puffs out in little clouds. The ground is cool beneath your feet, and the sky is smeared with the last traces of night. It's early, but you're already awake. Not just out of bed, awake. The kind of awake that only comes after medieval sleep. And now you realize how much of that restful rhythm came from something we almost never think about today, the natural light cycle. Without electricity, the day didn't begin when you decided. It began when the world decided. The first rays of sunlight slipping through shutters or holes in thatch. That was your alarm. Roosters knew it. Bakers knew it. Monks definitely knew it. Light meant time to move. And your body, it agreed. Because centuries of human biology evolved to respond to natural light. Not overhead fluorescents, not blue light LED screens. The sun. Modern science confirms what medieval people lived without question. Exposure to morning sunlight helps set your circadian rhythm. It boosts cortisol in a good way, nudges melatonin to take a break, and sets the tone for better sleep later. Historians still argue just how aware medieval people were of this light-sleep connection. But their routines show a deep, unconscious respect for it. They didn't fight the light, they followed it. You look around. The farm is waking up. Someone's chopping kindling. Someone else is brushing down a mule with a rhythm that feels almost musical. No one's rushing. There are chores, sure, but there's no morning panic, no frantic scroll through overnight notifications. And that's part of the sleep story too, because medieval sleep wasn't just about nighttime. It was about what came before and after. When your days are grounded, physically, emotionally, communally, your nights respond. You ate dinner with your family, not a glowing screen. You walked in the cool air before bed instead of collapsing in front of auto-played streaming. You burned off physical energy. You told stories. You prayed. You sat in stillness. So when sleep came, it came easily. And in the morning, you didn't wake up ripped from it. You rose out of it, like surfacing from water, instead of being yanked out by a grappling hook of obligation. Quirky detail. Some medieval towns had designated bell ringers who marked the hours not just for prayer, but to keep the community's rhythm on track. If you heard the 6 a.m. bell, it was time to get moving. Not because of productivity apps, because the town moved together. You yawn, still wrapped in a wool cloak. Your stomach rumbles. Someone's already baking bread. Its scent rides the air like a promise. You think back to your dream. Was that a talking deer? And realize for once, your sleep didn't just help your body. It helped your mind. No anxiety spiral. No restless tossing. Just sleep, like a tide pulling in and out. You tilt your face toward the pale sun. You're not thinking about calories or algorithms or inboxes. You're just here. And your body rested and aligned with something much older than smartphones or sleep clinics. Thanks you for it. You glance up at the sky and spot a low trail of chimney smoke curling lazily toward the clouds. The world is properly awake now, but you're still moving gently, like a soul that hasn't quite left the dream world behind. And you wonder, not for the first time, how did we get so far from this? Because today's culture, it tells you to optimize, to measure, to hack your sleep. Track your REM cycles, they say. Take this supplement. Set a wind-down alarm. You've been told rest is a system, a problem, a puzzle to solve. But medieval people, they didn't hack sleep. They lived it. And one of their most powerful, underrated sleep tools was the one you're standing in right now. Nature. Not nature as in a hike every other Sunday. Nature as in surrounding, interacting, dictating your reality. Your home wasn't soundproof. It breathed with the wind. You slept by a fire. Not because it was cozy, though it was, but because it was life. Your body responded to moonlight, to owls calling from trees, to the subtle pressure change before a rainstorm. The seasons told you when to rest more and when to rise earlier. Summer meant lighter. Blankets, longer days, and shorter sleep. Winter, winter, was a sleep festival. You stayed in longer, huddled tighter, dreamed deeper. Historians still argue whether medieval people fully understood the science of seasonal affective patterns, but their habits mirrored what modern sleep therapists now advise: sync your rhythms with the natural world. And quirky fact: there's evidence that during winter, some communities even encouraged extra naps during the day, a kind of proto-siesta to complement the long nights. People didn't scold themselves for being tired. They listened. They honored it. You meanwhile take a few steps along the muddy path outside. Your boots squelch slightly. The wind brushes your cheeks cool and clean. A raven hops along the fence and watches you like it knows things. You feel tuned in. Not because you meditated for 20 minutes, or because you drank a magnesium smoothie, but because you slept in sync with everything around you. There were no blackout curtains, no sound machines, but there was moss stuffed in window gaps and wooden shutters, and the low, lulling hum of a world that didn't pretend to be 24/7. Even towns slept, shops closed, streets emptied, no neon signs, no traffic, just nightfall and stillness. You think about modern cities, lit up like electric cemeteries, buzzing with noise and urgency. Sleep has to be carved out, fought for, defended. But here sleep simply arrives, uninvited, but welcome. That natural rhythm did more than rest muscles. It soothed nerves. In a world that could be brutal, violent, and short-lived, this nightly return to stillness was sacred. And here's the big idea. Medieval people might not have had luxury mattresses or noise-canceling walls, but they had something we've almost forgotten: the grace of enough. Enough daylight, enough movement, enough stillness, enough dark. So when their heads hit straw pillows or hay pallets or folded cloaks, they didn't count sheep. They counted blessings or sins or stars. And then they slept and woke and did it all again. You glance back at the cottage smoke trailing from its chimney like a sigh. Somewhere, someone's dozing again by the fire. The rhythm never stops. It just pulses gently like breath. You inhale that breath now. It smells like earth, like dawn, and you feel the quiet echo of a sleep you didn't have to chase. It just was. You find yourself wandering toward the fields, now the earth still soft from last night's dew. The path winds gently past hedges and low stone walls. A few others are out already, moving slowly, stretching, greeting each other with quiet nods. There's no rush, no urgency, because when you sleep like a medieval person, you wake like one too. And that means no alarm clocks, no shrill beeping, no vibrating phones, no synthetic sunrise lamps casting aggressive LED orange into your eyelids. Just the gentle nudging of the world itself. Your body wakes up because it's done, not because it's forced. Roosters, of course, get most of the credit. And let's be honest, they do crow with the kind of commitment usually reserved for Broadway sopranos. But they weren't the only alarm system. There were bells. Church bells, specifically. In towns and monasteries, bells rang at regular intervals. Matins, lauds, prime, marking the hours of prayer, and gently nudging people awake without shouting. Historians still debate whether these bells dictated the common person's schedule as much as the clergy's, but in a closely knit village, a bell was hard to ignore. Then there was light itself. As dawn crept in through wooden shutters, that pale blue glow triggered a cascade of chemical changes. Melatonin dips. Cortisol lifts your body quietly, saying, "All right, let's do this." Even animals were part of the wake-up crew. Cows mooing for milking, horses stomping in stalls, dogs stretching and shaking off sleep, life waking in layers. Quirky little detail. Some people used knocker-uppers in early modern towns. Yes, real humans whose job was to tap on windows with sticks to wake others. It's a practice that stuck around long past the Middle Ages in some places. Consider it humanity's least efficient snooze button. But mostly, you didn't need outside help. Your sleep was natural. And natural sleep has natural endings. You wake when your body's had enough rest, and the world's ready for you. And how glorious is that? Compare it to now, where we dread waking up. We fight the morning, bargain with our alarms, slam buttons, groan into pillows, because modern sleep often ends before we're ready. Not so in the medieval world. You slept early because darkness said so. You woke up rested because your body was allowed to follow the same path it had followed for generations. It's almost boring in its simplicity, and yet completely radical today. You pass a woman drawing water from the well. Her hair is tied up, her eyes soft with sleep, but not struggle. She slept like you did, whole, undisturbed, honest. You exchange a nod. There's something comforting about knowing the whole village moved this way. No one was answering emails at 3 a.m. No one was scrolling endlessly under their covers, half hoping the world would forget about them. The night came. Everyone slept. The day came. Everyone rose, together. You stop for a moment, stretch your arms toward the slowly brightening sky, and feel something settle in your chest. Not just air, not just peace. Rhythm. You're in rhythm again. Not with a schedule, but with the turning of the earth itself. There's movement now behind you, the familiar shuffle of small feet. A sleepy voice murmurs something incomprehensible, and you glance over your shoulder to find a child stumbling out of the doorway, blanket still tangled around one shoulder, hair sticking in all directions like a startled bird's nest. Ah, yes, children, cradles, and co-sleeping chaos. Because while medieval sleep had its restorative beauty, it wasn't always serene. Not when toddlers were involved, or babies, or heaven help you teenagers. You remember now this was a world where privacy was a myth, and bedrooms were optional. One-room cottages meant one-room everything, and that meant your sleep companions included not only your spouse, but your children, your neighbor's cousin, visiting from 2 towns over, and sometimes even a goat or 2, depending on the weather. Co-sleeping wasn't a parenting philosophy. It was a survival strategy. The hearth was warmest at the center of the home, and so the whole family nestled nearby. Infants slept in cradles, or were swaddled and tucked right into the parental bed. Older kids flopped wherever there was room. Straw piles, benches, even on the floor if needed. Historians still argue whether this arrangement was as cozy as it sounds, or if it led to more restless nights than we imagine. But records show a remarkable resilience in sleep routines. People adapted. They slept when and where they could. And if a baby cried at midnight, that was just part of the rhythm. Quirky little fact. Some medieval parents would soothe crying infants with herbal sleep aids. Not in pill form, of course, but steeped into cloths or rubbed gently onto the skin. Chamomile, lavender, poppy juice. Yes, really. Natural remedies that modern holistic brands now market in $20 glass bottles. But back then, it wasn't about wellness trends. It was about getting some rest in a room that sounded like a barn and smelled like smoke, sweat, and maybe turnips. And it wasn't just about babies. Even older kids often stayed close to their parents at night. Not out of neediness, but out of norm. Sleep was communal. Intimacy was practical. The whole idea of your room and my room wouldn't come around for centuries once houses had rooms to begin with. You take a few more steps and pass a cluster of cottages, hearing similar sounds. All around yawns, clanks of morning chores, laughter. One child giggles as their parent tries to wash their face with cold water from a bucket. Another is being shooed toward the fields with a lump of bread clutched in both hands. It's chaotic. It's noisy. But it's not stressed. Because even with the mess of shared beds, sleepless nights with colicky babies, or a random pig rooting around under the floorboards, people weren't panicking about 8 perfect hours. They weren't doom-googling sleep regressions at 2 a.m. They were living. And somehow, in that mess, they still managed to sleep. Not always perfectly, but regularly, with enough consistency to raise generations' farmland and build entire civilizations. You turn toward the rising sun. The warmth touches your face like a promise. Maybe sleep doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe it just has to happen. Amid the chaos, within the noise, together. The child behind you tugs on your cloak and asks something you don't quite catch. You smile, tousle their hay-scented hair, and lead them back inside. Sleep will come again tonight. It always does. You ease the cottage door closed behind you, the latch clicking gently into place. The day has fully begun now, yet the memory of the night lingers like the scent of wood smoke in your clothes, or the warmth of dreams still soft in the corners of your mind. But not every night was gentle. Sometimes sleep came with shadows. This is the quiet, hidden truth of medieval rest when you couldn't sleep. You prayed. Because insomnia, night terrors, and restlessness weren't just modern afflictions. They crept into medieval beds, too uninvited and unwelcome. You might not have had screen time, guilt, or the existential dread of 3 a.m. TikTok scrolling, but you had fear, real fear. Maybe it was the wolves howling from the forest, or the knock on the door no one wanted to hear, or just the silence itself, too complete, too absolute, pressing against your chest like a weight. Sleep wasn't always a sanctuary. So what did people do? They turned to faith. You kneel by your straw bed, now hands folded, almost instinctively, echoing the centuries of quiet pleading that once filled these rooms. Hail Marys, Our Fathers, psalms murmured into darkness like lullabies, because prayer wasn't just for churches. It was for the sort of moments between heartbeats when you felt very, very small. Historians still debate whether this constant return to prayer was driven more by devotion or by fear. But in a time when death was never far, and medicine was little more than guesswork. Prayer was the medicine for the soul. And sometimes it worked, not because the problem disappeared, but because the act of praying offered rhythm, repetition, a place to send the panic, to shape it into words and give it away to something bigger than yourself. Quirky little detail. Some monks, when plagued by insomnia, were permitted to leave their cells and walk in the cloisters, not to disturb others, but to move quietly, mindfully, to let their bodies settle again. You picture yourself doing the same. A slow circuit around the stone courtyard, the moonlight silvering the path. No phones, no clocks, just your breath, your steps, and your whispered pleas. And then, maybe back to bed. Of course, not everyone had prayer. Some people turned to herbal remedies. Valerian hops even crushed lettuce seeds, wrapped in linen poultices. Others believed that writing down one's worries and placing the paper under the pillow would confuse bad spirits and invite rest. Superstition and ritual walked hand in hand. Even dreams themselves were a battleground. Some believed that if you couldn't sleep, it was because something or someone was visiting you. Spirits, saints, demons. The line between night and nightmare was thin. You glance at the darkened hearth, the last embers finally dead. If this were one of those nights, you might light a candle not to see, but to push back the dark just a little, just enough. You wouldn't reach for a phone or a podcast. You'd reach for presence, for breath, for surrender. That's what made medieval rest resilient. Not just the schedule, not just the darkness, but the rituals people clung to when sleep slipped away. You exhale, slowly. And even if you don't fall back asleep, you lie still. You let the silence settle again, not as an enemy, but as a blanket. Because even in wakefulness, there is rest. And in rest, the promise that sleep will come again. The day is nearly full. Now, sun brushing rooftops, the smell of baking bread curling around the edge of your doorway, and children's laughter skipping like pebbles across a stream. But as you move through the cottage one last time, something deeper settles in. A realization. What we lost with electricity. You glance at the single candle stub left on the table. You didn't light it last night. You didn't need to. The night came naturally. Darkness wasn't feared. It was expected, embraced. A signal, a rhythm older than calendars and clocks. Then came the switch. Gas lamps, electric bulbs, neon signs, blue light. We lit the night like a battlefield and declared war on sleep. Historians still argue about when the modern sleep disruption began in earnest. Was it industrialization, the spread of electric grids, or was it something slower, more insidious, the gradual erosion of respect for rest? Whatever the cause, we lost something. Medieval people didn't sleep because they should. They slept because the world told them to, and their bodies listened. You think about the flickering TV glow that keeps modern living rooms alive until midnight, the endless scroll of information noise alerts, the homes that never fully dim, the minds that never fully shut off. You've lived in both worlds now, and this one, the one with straw mattresses and star-shaped dreams, it's quieter, it's messier, too sure, more chaotic, less private, but it knows how to rest. It trusts sleep. It lets you surrender to it without guilt. Quirky fact: before electricity, average people slept longer. Not better every night, but longer overall. 8 hours was normal, sometimes more in winter. It wasn't indulgent, it was sensible. Your body needed it, so you gave it what it needed. You let the candle burn out. You let the dark stay dark. And because of that, you woke restored. You look around one last time. The bed's unmade. The ashes are cool. The air smells of life beginning again. And though your time here is ending, the rhythm lingers in your bones. You could bring this back, not the goat in the kitchen or the draft through the walls, though, hey, character builds resilience, but the reverence, the pause, the permission to turn off the lights, not because it's late, but because you're tired. You could walk in moonlight instead of scrolling under it. You could trust sleep to come in its own way, in its own time. And maybe, just maybe, you could sleep like your ancestors once did, with less noise, less light, less fear, with more trust, more rhythm, more rest. You're still now. Let the last images fade, the flickering candlelight, the distant hoot of an owl, the warmth of a sleeping child curled beside you. Let them soften, like morning mist dissolving into the air. You've walked through a world quieter than ours, slower, more honest. You've breathed in the hush of a room gone dark, not by force, but by rhythm. And maybe your own breath is slower now. Maybe the weight of your body feels a little easier, a little less like tension and more like presence. There's no need to hold on to anything right now. Not your to-do list, not your phone, not even the story. Let it all drift. You are lying somewhere between the first sleep and the second, now, like the villagers did. The pause in the middle of the night, where time stretches and the world waits, and your soul feels safe to wander. If your mind is still busy, give it permission to quiet. If your body aches, let it know you hear it. And if you can't fall asleep just yet, don't worry. Rest is still rest. You've done enough for today. The night is long enough. The dark is kind enough, and sleep eventually always returns. Just let go. Let go now and sleep.